welcome back to the 7 Sage LSAT podcast. My name is Alex. I'm your host, and I'm joined today by 7 Sage tutor, Sam. How are you doing today, Sam?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So we're going to talk a little bit about your journey. I guess we'll just start with the headline. What was your diagnostic score, and what did you end up with?
Yeah, so I started with a 159 and I ended up with a 173.
That's amazing. Well, let's just start at the beginning. Um, when did you start thinking that you wanted to go to law school? Is it something you've always known? How did that come to be?
Yeah, I mean, I did debate in high school and thought it was the same thing, and then went to college and rethought that as I took classes, kind of introducing myself to con law and other legal adjacent topics. But over time, I started to do more research and internships in the field and kind of realized that it was something I would be interested in. And I wanted to apply early, but life kept getting in the way. So I started studying um, a couple months after graduating in May of 2025. And then I took the September 2025 LSAT.
If you're at home listening, by the way, just want to butt in here. That is still early by most standards. So you're well ahead of the curve there. What were your internships, out of curiosity?
I had some cool ones. So I did an internship in civil litigation in Atlanta that I loved. But my favorite was I studied in Senegal over one summer and worked for an international human rights slash like international law group, think tank in Dakar, and it was incredible. Highly recommend if anybody gets the chance to get out to Dakar.
Yeah. So you're there for a whole summer. Tell us a little bit about it. Hey, we can talk about whatever, and I'm interested to hear about that a bit.
I love talking about it. It was great. I made some mistakes, namely not really speaking French in a French speaking country. So when I first got there and I was staying with my host family, didn't speak. I like had high school level French and I hadn't practiced it in years. Didn't understand anything that anyone was saying, but they were the sweetest people. I learned so much. And it was also a good excuse to learn a little bit of the local language, Wolof. Um, and that got harder when I went to a law firm basically to work, and everyone was talking about these complex legal topics, and I didn't know what was going on. But the trial by fire really worked. I think immersion is an incredible tool, and it was a cool way to see that law is kind of a universal thing. It's these concepts are stuff that people are talking about all over, and seeing how another country works and how international law works is really good for deepening your understanding of what's going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. I would imagine. That's great. So what? So it sounds like you knew for a fair bit that you wanted to pursue this path. When did you decide to start studying?
Yeah, I wanted to study. It was on the back of my mind for since midway through junior year of college, but just life, other things were priorities, I guess, and also I kind of realized it was really valuable to keep my GPA up and that I could always study for the LSAT after college, which I do recommend. Um, yeah, and then after taking a few months after graduating, I traveled a bit more, and then I said it's time to buckle down and get serious about this.
Yeah, that's just like something. That's a great piece of advice to just highlight for anyone. If you are in college, there's two factors that matter the most in your application profile, and that's your GPA and your LSAT. Most people who are in the application phase have no control over their GPA. That has been cooked. That is fully cooked, not in the colloquial sense now, but cooked as in a fully formed dish. There's no changing it. It is fixed. There's no changing it. If you're in college and you have the choice, first of all, nothing wrong with taking the LSAT in college, but like that is the time you have to keep that GPA up. So, certainly I would recommend, all things being equal, not a bad approach to just say, hey, these are the 4 years where I have some say in what my GPA is. The LSAT can wait. And despite what Sam may feel, it is not late to apply 1 year out. So seems like a good approach. And so, what was it like transitioning from school mode to LSAT mode?
Uh, I will be honest, the first few weeks were not fun, but it's partially because in between school mode and LSAT mode, I was in Thailand, I was in India eating great food, having fun. Uh, and then I came home and was like, I guess I've got to sit down and study. But after that initial period, when I kind of figured out how I wanted to study and how I could make it more fun for myself, it was way more enjoyable. But buckling down at first and embracing that there's so much you don't know about this test, it was a difficult step for me for sure.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What it's so take us through that diagnostic. What was the experience like for you?
Yeah, it was pretty rough for me, not because the score is bad. A 159 is great and it's a great starting point, but it was rough for me because I was missing questions of every question type all over the board, different difficulty levels. It didn't matter if it was the first question or the 26th question, I was struggling with it and I was really slow. I felt like my attention span wasn't great, and I took it at like nighttime, which wasn't great for me. I learned very quickly that I needed to be a morning test taker. But there were just so many things that felt off. It felt difficult. I felt so burnt out in the moment, and I didn't realize how useful going through that would be because each one of those things was something that I learned to control for later. But thinking back on that initial diagnostic, it was not a fun time for me.
Yeah, it's humbling. Yeah, that's I think people don't put enough importance on that. Yeah, you don't know. I mean, you might have some idea about what you're, when you're best, what part of the day you're best, where. I mean, the diagnostic is your first chance to just like even you're probably not even aware of what the variables are that go into your test. I mean, once you take it, you can start to think about, okay, where do I want to do this? What time do I want to do it? Like all of these things seem secondary and yet they're like enormously important. Like the time of day where you're like cognitively at your best, I mean, that's worth a lot, like, yeah, yeah, yeah. The diagnostic is a good time to start thinking about that. Okay. So you take the diagnostic, what was where did you take that? Did you take that on Law Hub? Did you take it on Seven Sage? What were you?
I took it on 7 Sage. I was lucky enough to have some friends that were studying at the same time, and they had already been using 7 Sage and loved it. So I started out right away with it.
Great, great. So, and then what was your experience like that after that? So the next day, what do you do? You have your results in hand. What do you do?
Yeah, so I I started making everything about the LSAT for the first week or 2. I was listening to podcasts like this one. I was going through the core curriculum on 7 Sage, and I wasn't really trying to, like, lock down anything in particular or study anything specific yet. I was just trying to get a vibe for what is this test? 'Cause I still really didn't know what was going on. I think over time, I started to learn more how to efficiently study and what to prioritize, but just going through the core curriculum on 7 Sage and talking with my friends and trying to think the LSAT a little bit was a good starting point.
And what was your progress like? Did you use the core curriculum? Like, how did you go about studying for this thing after your sort of initial immersion, as it were?
Yeah, I used the core curriculum. I did a pass through of, I think I'd say like 80% of the core curriculum before I took another prep test. Um, the progress is never linear, and at the start, it was really difficult. One of the things that I think could be useful for people to take away is I started out by coasting on a lot of the easy to middle difficulty questions, especially with like my summaries of stuff. I think in the LSAT, being able to like take a stimulus and say, here's a simple version of this that has the important nuances and is leaving out additional information. Like that's a big part of this test. And I was getting by with mediocre summaries. And I was getting a lot of those questions right. But then when I got to harder questions, my summaries were not cutting it. And I hadn't worked that muscle of how to improve them. So weirdly, what made me change my process is I was listening to an NBA podcast and they were talking about how Steph
Drop the
Curry.
podcast. What
Oh
what
yeah,
what what podcast?
it was back when JJ Redick was not the coach of the Lakers and
Oh,
was a
with LeBron.
podcaster. Yeah, before that one, the old man and the
Oh,
three before
I guess it
Miami
was
Heat.
very brief that they both were on the same podcast together,
It
right?
was brief, but I loved
Yeah.
it. I was learning
Yeah.
so much. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
terrible at
yeah.
basketball, but I was sitting
This
there.
is the second podcast in a row where basketball has come up. Our last podcast was with a basketball coach. So
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm out of my depth here. I was especially out of my depth there. Although I have watched.
Honestly, same.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, so you're listening to the old man of the three, wait, was Steve? Oh wait, did Steve Nash take over for
He
JJ Redick?
did,
Is that what
yeah.
happened?
Yeah. It's
This
Steve
is so
Nash and
boring
LeBron
for
right now.
everyone's like, okay, I thought we were done with basketball last episode, and here we are.
A little bit more basketball.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I was listening to JJ Redick, who's a great shooter, talk about what separates good shooters from the best shooters. And he was talking about Steph Curry's routine for training. He was talking about how Steph Curry, like every NBA player, gets a ton of shots up in the gym. He practices shooting a ton, and he'll do drills where he has to make a certain amount of shots in a certain amount of time. However, he's super strict about what he considers a make. So if the ball goes in, but it hits the rim or hits the backboard or even swishes in the wrong part of the rim, he counts it as a miss. And the reason for this is because on game day, if he's a little bit off, if he's trained to that level of precision, he'll still probably make the shot. Even his misses look perfect to us, peasants compared to Steph Curry. And so I was thinking about that while thinking about the LSAT, and I was like, even if I'm getting these questions right, I should take a few minutes or a few seconds on these easy questions to make sure that my summaries are as effective as possible, that I'm being efficient, that I'm not wasting words, that I'm getting there quickly, that I'm not including information that is unnecessary or confusing me. And by just taking the time to consciously work on that and hold myself to a higher standard, it made it less likely that I was going to just completely fumble a summary on a difficult question later. And by working that muscle and making it conscious, it was like one more factor that I could control and one more factor that I could be confident in on the real thing.
I love that. Wow, that's great. I love that analogy. Yeah. It's like hold yourself to yeah, success, like just normal success isn't enough when you're training. It's like, it's like, I don't know, in baseball, like putting a donut on the bat. Like you swing a heavier bat so that when you actually get up there, it's lighter, it's faster. Like, you train under harder conditions than you're gonna have the day of, and that's so applicable to this test. Yeah. Yeah, walk us through a little bit more about how did that philosophy how did that change things? What did you do with that?
Well, I took that philosophy to a lot of elements of the test. I think I spent a lot more time reviewing misses than even those makes. I realized that, especially as you get into higher score bands, you're going to be getting the majority of questions right. And even question type probably won't be as important because you're not just going to be missing all of the flaw questions anymore. Like you're going to be in the point where you're not you're not really that worried about a question type. You're worried about a trick on a question type that got you. So I think as I got into the higher scores, it became less about just refining my summaries, which I felt confident about, and started to be more about going a level deeper than just the content, taking it a step further. So what I mean by this is I would start asking myself a lot of why questions whenever I would review a question. I would ask myself, why did I miss this? Why did the test writers write this trap answer in this way? Why is my approach not working on this type of question? Or why did this phrasing confuse me? Because sometimes the things that seem unfair or random or, oh, that was just a hard question, sometimes you can see the patterns in them. And if you really take the time to think about the why, it actually saves you a lot of time because instead of drilling a million questions, you can get a lot of good takeaways from the few that you've missed. And you'll start to see they don't invent new stuff. They're repeating a lot of the same tricks because they know they work and they know how many people get trapped by them. So if you just learn the tricks and think a little bit deeper about it, you'll save time in the long run.
The other thing that occurs to me as you're saying that is it's like the LSAT isn't designed to it's like for it to work, it also requires people to succeed, right? It requires people to do, I mean, and it's a scaled test. So, like, ultimately, whatever. This is maybe a little bit strained of an analogy, but like, I think it's hard for people to see that, like, yeah, there are underlying patterns because that's what makes it learnable. Like, that's what makes it something that can measure, um, I don't know, not just like innate it's not just an intelligence test, right? Like being smart helps, but it's also just about like dedication. I mean, all the things that you're talking about. And in order to reward those things, there have to be patterns. There have to be like tricks, for lack of a better term, right? And so like it's not like I love to personify the LSAT writers. I love to say that as if they're not human. Like I don't need to personify them. They are in fact people. But I love to like refer to them as this sort of like nebulous like enemy because it can be motivating. But like ultimately, like they don't want it to be this thing where it's like everyone's going to get every single question wrong. It has to be learnable. That's part of the thing they're testing, right? So I don't know. It's a little bit off topic, but it did occur to me in as you were talking about it. Like, what were some of those patterns that you started to identify? Do you remember a moment, certain moments along the way where things started to click?
Yeah, I'd say 2 things. First, on what you were just saying, I also love personifying the test writers, and I have lots of respect for them, but I also wanna encourage people to look for the times when they get lazy. Like, there are certain questions that they will always throw in there because they know 30% of people always miss that, and that helps them control the curve a little bit. So, like, for example, if you just learn the difference between necessary and sufficient and recognize when they confuse those 2 things, you're leaps and bounds ahead of a ton of other test takers. And that's like one simple pattern that you can control. I'd say the second thing is for me, the moment where it really clicked was flaw questions. I saw the seven sage list of most common flaws, and I was like, "Wait a minute, they're not inventing new ones every time." And a 1 star question and a 5 star question, it's likely to be still the same flaw. It's just a little bit more confusing wording. And once I started to notice those patterns, it was like night and day with how I progressed on flaw questions.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just a little bit gussied up. Like the harder it gets, it just gets, the more things to distract you, more things to kind of parse through. But like the underlying architecture is the same. Yeah, absolutely. Um, you mentioned too, I mean, I don't know how to like artfully get into this. Well, as if I'm saying it as if it's like as if it's a heavy topic. You have ADHD, and that is something that a lot of um, uh, so many people have, particularly LSAT takers. And I did want to make sure to talk about that with you because I think it's something that like so many people and it shared um, experience. Why is this taking me so long to get through? It's as if I'm talking about something so heavy, and it's not. We talked about it beforehand. It's something that you shared with me, and that I think has a lot of value. So, can you talk a little bit about how that manifests for you and how it affected your process?
If you had asked me a year ago if I thought that I would be on a podcast talking about how I manage ADHD, I would be like, "You've got the wrong guy. I'm not particularly good at it, um, and never have been." But the LSAT, I think, made me a lot
By
better
it, you
at.
mean you're not particularly good at. You didn't feel like you were good at managing ADHD.
Yeah, yeah, I thought I
Hmm.
was pretty awful at it, and,
Hmm.
like, I've gotten by, but, the LSAT made me sit down and really think about what I would change because it was really difficult, and part of what made that diagnostic so difficult is that I'm terrible at focusing, I'm terrible at, uh, keeping one train of thought going, I'm terrible at sitting down for that long at once. It's like it's all difficult, but I was able to come up with a lot of strategies, some from Seven Sage that really helped me. So, for starters, and one of the biggest ones that I think could help anyone, regardless of if they have ADHD, is limit short form content while you are studying for the LSAT. Like for me, it was deleting TikTok and Instagram off my phone right away, and I noticed instantly that my short form recall was or short term recall was much better. I was more likely to sit down for longer periods of time, all that sort of stuff. I also learned that like the time of day and my routine mattered a ton. Like the time that I studied, the what I ate, all those sorts of things really mattered for me. And then uh, The other things were just getting confidence on particular question types kind of serves as a distraction or a break for me. So I mentioned flaw questions. I mentioned that I was really obsessive about learning the most common flaw types. For me, every time I saw a flaw question, I turned my brain off. I was confident that I was going to get it because that was the thing I was the most prepared for, and I had seen a million of these questions before. And for me, that was a time to reset because I couldn't be on go mode or 100% the entire time. So I had to take places where I could be confident that I'd be okay and relax my brain a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 that's amazing. Um, I think the first thing you said, it's like that's huge. It's also not like it's, in terms of, like, limiting short form content, like, I've never thought about it in quite, like, those granular of terms. Like, I often think about the fact that, like, phones are largely bad. Well, they're good. They're amazing, but, the effect they have on the human mind is not ideal. But I haven't thought about it in quite that way. Like, to me, the phone, I think of it for myself and for like students as like it's a distraction. So get it out of there. Like, don't get distracted by it. But like, you've kind of surfaced something that's like just as important, which is like, stop like just mindlessly swiping through like 5 to 60 second long clips because it totally warps your level of, like, your attention span. Like, how did you arrive at that? Like, how did you because it requires a lot of discipline too.
Yeah, it did. It was not it was not easy. It's weirdly hard to get off of short form content.
It's not weirdly hard. It's, like, one of the great issues of our world, I think.
Yes, it
Yeah,
definitely is. And
yeah.
it was something that I realized pretty quickly into studying. I was like, these RC passages are I mean, spending 7 minutes or 8 minutes on an RC passage shouldn't feel this draining. And I realized that a lot of my day was going towards scrolling, and I could be doing more productive or better things, or just enjoying my life in a way that actually refreshed me. Because scrolling on my phone wasn't helping with burnout, it wasn't making me feel more fulfilled. Um, but that said, it took a lot of accountability mechanisms for me. So this is probably more than most people want to do, but I deleted all the apps off my phone, and then every day before a prep test, I would get off my phone at like 7 p.m. And I would let everyone in my life know, like my family members, and my girlfriend and everything. I would let them know that I wasn't going to be available for a while. And I live with my older sister, which is great, and she was my like middleman. So if anybody actually needed me, they could go to her. But in the meantime, I had people who knew I wasn't supposed to be on my phone. And I just made that a pattern so that on test day it didn't feel different. And I was used to just having a bit of a digital detox.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. It's again, not to harp on it, but I'm like, I think you've really, like, uncovered. Not that this isn't like this is obvious, but it's like it is not simply getting distracted and going from working on the test to looking at your phone. It is like the residual effects of how your mind is conditioned by TikTok, Instagram, or any number of other things. And so yeah, like having that discipline to not just say like I always say like people who've listened for a long time know that like I literally lock up my phone at different like, I have a timed lockbox, but, like, I use that for, like, the periods of time discrete periods of time where I'm doing something, not like, I think what you're talking about is equally, if not more important, which is just like yeah, okay, maybe I'm not like my phone isn't pulling me away from the task because I literally can't look at it, but like the way my brain is the mode that my brain is in is constantly pulling my focus at least a little bit away every 30 seconds or so because I'm like in a zone where I'm expecting something novel every 30 seconds. So like that detox is like feels super important and like I don't know, going back to the opening, talking about Steph Curry counting only counting makes if they're perfect. It's like I'm beginning to see how you really like you didn't just take care of the, you know the small tasks, you expanded your focus to like seeing the whole field, I guess, or the whole court. If we let's keep our sports metaphors consistent here, just everything. There's so much that affects performance here. So I don't know. Was that hard to keep up all of the being so fastidious and disciplined?
I think so. I mean, having people that I studied with and people to hold me accountable in my family and my girlfriend and my friends, like, that was super helpful. But I think the other thing, and this is a great opportunity to bring up another basketball related saying. Lots of basketball coaches say, keep the main thing. Like when players get to the NBA, they get excited by being a celebrity or making a ton of money or whatever. But the ones who really succeed are the ones who still put basketball first. I think for me, recognizing the impact that a good LSAT score could have on my life was important. Like, for better or for worse, this test holds a lot of weight. And being in a position where I was waking up and thinking about the little things that could improve my test taking ability, it was a small price to pay. Like in the grand scheme of things, that was the thing that should be the top priority. And focusing a little bit more on why I was doing things a certain way or how I could improve my studying a little bit. Um, it was kind of a fun game to play and it paid dividends and it was what I should have been doing. So I'm glad that that's the route I went down.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, has it have the changes you made stuck around? Like, or have they receded now that the test is out of the way?
I'd say they've receded a little bit, just because I'm no longer obsessive about keeping my phone out of my room. Which was really good for me at the time. But I don't really watch short form content anymore. And I'm grateful for that because that was definitely a problem.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've talked about it before, but like, listen, you can look at this test as just like a short chapter in your life that you just need to put your head down and get through. And there's like nothing wrong about that. But like, it's actually an opportunity to like make a lot of lasting changes. Um, I've said it many times, but like life, if you are taking this test, then you want to go to law school and you want to be a lawyer. Those are not low pressure, low stress, low stakes choices, right? And so things don't get easier necessarily after the test. And in a way, this test is sort of like a laboratory. It's like, you know, it's just a very defined task where you can develop habits and knowledge of yourself that will pay dividends in the future. Like knowing what is best for you. Like, okay, you, Sam, now know like how detrimental short form content is to your attention span. Like that doesn't just cease to matter now that you're done with the test. It will matter. It probably matters more now, because like once the rest of your life starts, and so it's really an opportunity to learn a lot about yourself. I don't know if that like resonates with you or if you've seen that in other people, your students.
No, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's so deeply personal too, because I think one of the things that I appreciate about the LSAT is that it's not content based at all. It's you learning how to beat this test, and the test is the tricks and the traps that the test writers write. It's not, do you understand the law? It's not, do you understand science? Like, regardless of the jokes that you'll see from LSAT studiers, like, you don't need to know anything about these topics to do well in this test. And that makes it a really interesting challenge to just face a test that is about test taking and not about anything else.
Yeah. It's also why I'm confused when people like try to anticipate what the topics are going to be. Like, I understand, like, okay, I get it that like a little bit of contextual knowledge can be helpful, but like honestly, worrying about that takes up is so much more of a detriment. Like to me, it's like I don't want to know. I don't want to know, like because it's like what, like it's such a waste of time to then go and learn a bunch of stuff about a topic um, that could be in an RC passage, and then if it's not, I'm like a met. It's just it's not what the test is about. Like it's about these underlying patterns that have nothing to do with the superficial, you know, topic differences.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I also encourage people to think a little bit more deeply about why they're doing stuff, because it's the same thing for me with people who just do a million questions or take every prep test that they can. If you're not analyzing the patterns or thinking about how to study more efficiently, you're going to end up studying inefficiently. Like how you study and how you prepare and how you walk into a test day. Those are all skills that you can work on too. Those are all factors that affect your score just as much as anything else. And so while getting a volume up or getting lots of shots up if you're Steph Curry is important, how you do it is also important. And if you take a little bit of time to reflect on that, it'll go a long way.
My wife, you saying just getting a lot of shots up. My wife is from Iowa, so she got very into basketball when Caitlin Clark was. She didn't go to Iowa, but still, just if you're from the state of Iowa, it was sort of a monumental event. And so now she has a very limited but intense period of interest in basketball, and she loves learning phrases like getting a lot of shots up. So she'll just say like, "I got to get some shots up today," but it's meaningless. She's never played basketball, and it's like a joke. And it's just like, but the thing is, you can apply it wherever. And I need to get some shots up today. Like, what are the shots that you need to get up today? They're not literal shots. It could be some questions, get some questions, whatever it might be. We all need to get our shots up. Yeah. Um, uh, what has it been like, transitioning to tutoring? Yeah, what's it been like?
It's been really cool. I'm so impressed by everyone that I've worked with. All the students that I've met think about the test super differently and in really creative ways. And I think that's broadened my horizons on not telling people, here's how to do it, but instead telling people to think about how to do it. Um, it's also cool that it forces you to have multiple explanations for things. Like if the first explanation doesn't click or if it's not what that person is responsive to, being able to explain the test in different ways is valuable. And I'd say a takeaway for that for people is to study with other people, because explaining answers to each other and being able to say, okay, they didn't get that version. How can I explain it in a way that makes sense to them? It ends up really, really helping you with your own understanding. So I think I've gotten a lot better at the test by tutoring it, and I would encourage other people to work together and build up your skills collectively.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the differences between uh, me and you is that I'm older. And so I was taking this test when I was in my 30s. And so I didn't have friends who were, I'm still in my 30s, by the way. So I'm not that much older than you. But it's like, I didn't have friends who were like in this zone. They weren't down to be taught about these things. They were, but I did have a patient and friendly and loving father who was interested in these sort of things, and teaching my dad some of these concepts was like incredibly beneficial and helpful. So like, I'm very find the person who's willing to let you, um, corner them and teach them about these things, because it's super helpful. And gosh, I mean, I think about how much better I got at the test once I was done with it and started teaching it. And like, it's a shame you can't have both the experiences, as far as most people are concerned.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and also just making it social is fun. Like it makes it less about, oh, I've got to get -3 on LR today, and more about, hey, isn't this a cool question, dad? Or isn't this a cool question? Whatever. Like
Thank you for
some of these
indulging,
questions,
dad, throwing the dad in there to make it personal again.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it
Unless
could be
that's what you call
anybody,
your
but
friend. I don't know. Yeah, yeah.
no, but I mean, I'm sure some
Could be
people,
swap it in and out.
but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yeah, making it social is cool. And sometimes you forget that at the end of the day, a lot of these questions are just like funny word puzzles or like little brain teasers or twisters, whatever they're called. It's like even random people in your life will find some joy out of talking about this, and even if they don't, you can just like force it on them a little bit at a time.
Not everyone has to be like, look, not everyone is the sort of like freak freaks. I'll say it. I was going to avoid it, but like freaks that, people who decide to people who enjoy this, like I think you and I know me do. But you don't have to enjoy it fully. There's still, I have yet to meet someone who can't find some satisfaction or fun in it. It's there. Like, don't avoid it because like they're little puzzles and they're satisfying to solve, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And highly recommend if you're trying to get somebody into talking about the LSAT with you, get that T-Rex question. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't remember that one. It's been a few it's been now I haven't actually taught in, like, a year, and it's like the the memory is being freed up. I used to be able to recall every single question, and now I'm not, which is okay.
Okay, so every time people love going through that question, and it's a 5-star question. It's like one of the most difficult on that prep test, but I always laugh thinking about it because it's something so simple, so comical. Anybody could get there, but so many of us, including myself, looked at that for the first time and said, "What on earth are they getting at here?"
Yeah. Well, because like, they're not communicating in the way that a normal person would communicate. They're trying to obscure meaning. They're not trying to convey meaning all the time. So it's like the way that like a mystery is written. Like you're not trying to reveal, you're trying to artfully set the stakes for a reveal, right? Or like plant the seeds. But you don't want people to guess it, right? So it's the same thing and it's just it it's a paradigm shift. It's so different from how, we just assume that like that people like shared context is implied and all of these things and it really teaches you a lot about how we think and the leaps that we make because we assume that the people like who we're talking to are like want us to understand what they want to say, which even still there's so many opportunities to like miss meaning and that stuff. But man, when the person you're talking to is trying to obscure the meaning, it's a different ball game altogether.
Oh, yeah, like, when they for reading comp, they take the reading comp passages from real journals, but they'll switch the orders, or they'll delete a paragraph that gives you important context or something. It is weird going you are kind of going up against the test writers instead of learning with the test writers or whatever.
It was very eye opening for me to like I looked at the source material for a passage like the first time I did that and I was like, oh, like the article that it was adapted from, it was like there was an intro paragraph and it was like, this is true for a number of reasons. And then like the first paragraph was like, first, blah, 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 blah. And then the next paragraph was like, the second reason why, blah, blah, blah. And they just took out the part that says the second reason why. Like they just took out that like connective tissue, and it's like, it seems subtle and it is subtle, but it's like, that's hugely important. Like just think about someone editing something with that set of goals. It's so, it's crazy. You're really up against it. Um, No, but it's learnable and it is, I mean, I think your story is, I mean, it just sounds like dedication and, really leaving nothing to chance, like, it sounds like I mean, from what I'm hearing, you just did a really good job of looking at controlling every single little thing that you could control, and that's really the key. It's like controlling everything you can and then not stressing out about the things that you can't. Um, um, have you I actually I did wanna ask, like, have you worked with anyone who either or, like, has ADHD because they've shared it with you or, like, has similar tendencies or anything like that? And, like, how does that inform the work that you do with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've definitely worked with people who have ADHD, including, like, friends and people that I've tutored. And it does impact stuff a little bit, but I think so much of it is stuff that we all struggle with to just to varying degrees. Um, and everyone's relationship to it is really personal or like different. Not personal in like a sensitive way, but personal in like everyone benefits from different strategies. And so I think the biggest thing for me with working with people who have ADHD while they're studying for the LSAT is just being flexible and encouraging them to try different stuff. Like, I don't particularly care if the stuff is working right away. That's fine if you decide it's not for you. But just taking the time to say, I'm going to try this drill, or I'm going to try studying at the exact same time every day, or I'm going to try warm up drills to start getting my focus ready, or whatever. As long as my clients are like trying different stuff, that's all I want because that's the only way that you're going to stumble on what works for you.
Yeah, totally. Totally. That's great. Is there anything I mean, I feel like we've covered a lot and we've gotten a lot of nuggets of wisdom. I feel like this has sort of unlocked a lot. You've presented things in a way that, like, I mean, there's just sometimes you feel like you've thought about this in all the ways that it's possible to think about it, but that's never true. And so I think, like, yeah, a lot of the like analogies you've used and like ways in that you've presented are like exciting for me, and I hope to the listener. But is there anything that you feel like we left out? Any pieces of wisdom that particularly helped you that we haven't talked about, or anything you want to add on?
There's nothing crazy different, but I'd just say the main takeaway that I encourage for people is when it feels like you're hitting a wall, or when it feels like you're just not getting stuff, or progress isn't linear and that's upsetting, everyone goes through that, and it's difficult. But one of the things that you can do is think about all the different factors outside of how well you're doing on a particular question type or section or whatever, all of those different factors that you can control. If you're controlling everything else, then whether you realize it or not, your floor is going to be increasing. And if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or you have technical difficulties, or something happens during the exam, you're still going to be okay. And controlling for those times when it's difficult, or you don't feel like studying, or you don't know what's going on. That's the way that you actually get better at this test. You get better when it's hard. You don't get better when it's easy. And control all the stuff that you can, and you'll be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting. It reminds me that oftentimes people will be like, should I take it at home or should I take it in a testing center? And like, because I know when I take it at home, like things can there's more likelihood that there's like technical difficulties or whatever. I don't know. You can look at it both ways, but the advice that I usually give is like, I don't know, what's the ideal scenario for you? It's sort of the opposite of what you hear, but like, plan for the worst, but I'm like, what setting would you do best in? Because like if something goes bad, you can just retake it. It'll be okay. It won't be the end of the world. Just like and that is just one of those things that you can't control. You can't control if the the internet cuts out or things like, I mean, if you really have unreliable internet, if there are things that are like that are gonna make it like a losing proposition, then take that into consideration. But if like you have a normal setup, you have like if you've controlled all of the things that you can control, I'm a fan of just saying, well, what's the ideal scenario and going from there. But again, it boils down to leaving the things that are out of your control because worrying about them doesn't do any good. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, like even on my real thing, I essentially had to double the amount of time I was sitting there, because they had multiple security checks that like they were slow on, or they made me wait in waiting rooms or whatever. And like that's not fun, but I had done so many drills where I had forced myself to sit there long enough to work on my endurance, or longer than a regular LSAT would be. And it didn't throw me off. I still got a score that I was proud of. Like whether you get the ideal circumstances or not, if you really put time into preparing and think about all the factors that you can control, you'll be able to deal with a curveball or two. Or yeah, just retake it. There's no big deal in that either.
Totally. Awesome. Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was a pleasure, and I think I know people will get a lot out of it. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate y'all, and definitely relied on this podcast a lot when I was studying. So thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for listening at home. We'll be back next week. And yeah, take care. Good luck.